So let's find out what happens. Ben sits at the kitchen table where he sat half a dozen times before. The late afternoon sun shines through the window and onto Mrs. Tibbet's hands, resting on the table just across from him. It's over, Ben thinks. All of this, and nothing happens. The houses get built, and the Spadefoots lose their home. Isn't there anything that you can say to your sister-in-law? He asks. Mrs. Tibbets shakes her head. There's not a thing that I can do. We are too far apart, and she wouldn't listen to me no matter what I said. But Mr. Lindsay said that she could still make some money, even if she sold the land to people that would take care of it. I know, but she's got her mind made up, and they have a buyer who's willing to pay a lot of money. I can't imagine what would make her change her mind. Ben looks out the window and tries to picture the trees gone and the land filled up with houses. Your husband wouldn't have sold the land to someone so they could build houses on it, would he? No, he loved this land. Well, doesn't she love it too? You would think so. She grew up on it. I tried reminding her of that, but she wouldn't listen. She won't listen to anything I say. And some of Mrs. Tibbet's words catch Ben's attention. She grew up on it. And then an idea hits him. Mrs. Tibbets, where are those pictures? What pictures? You know, those old pictures that you were going through a couple of weeks ago. Where are they? On the dining room table. So Ben jumps up and runs to the dining room. He brings the box back into the kitchen and he dumps the contents onto the table. Mrs. Tibbets watches him without speaking as he searches through the yellowed old photographs. And then he finds the snapshot that he's been looking for, and he holds it up in the fading light. It's a picture of two kids sitting on a rock. And suddenly he realizes that it's the rock that he and Mrs. Tibbet sat on by the vernal pool. He gazes at the picture, watching the years fall away. The girl is Tabitha and the boy is Thomas, and they're both holding American toads. The girl has a big grin and doesn't look anything like the grown-up Mrs. Tabitha Turner. Ben flips over the photo, and scrawled on the back are the words, Tom, me, and the Overtone. And he turns the picture over again and looks at the girl holding the toad. The Overtone. Tabitha and the Overtone. Mrs. Tibbets, this is Tabitha, isn't it? Mrs. Tibbets takes the photo and holds it at arm's length. Yes, she said, squinting. It's Tabitha and Thomas. Look at what she wrote on the back. She knows about the Overtone. You mean she knew about it when she was little? But she forgot, Ben says. Yes, she forgot. Things happen when you grow up, and you forget. Mrs. Tibbets gets up and puts the dishes in the sink, and Ben slips the photo into his jacket pocket. I have to go now, he says. I need to get to work on my geography report. Mrs. Tibbets dries her hand on a dish towel. Your report? I thought you said it was due today. It was, but Mrs. Kutcher is giving me another week. I changed it on what I'm doing, and if I don't finish it this time, she'll kill me. I doubt that. Well, bye, Ben says, and he scoots out the back door. There's so much to do, and he doesn't know if he has enough time, but he whirls around and he sticks his head back through the doorway. Mrs. Tibbets, maybe the Overtone will save us. I would love that, Mrs. Tibbets says. 2 days later, on a hot Sunday afternoon, Ben leads Ryan and Jenny down the path from his house, and they're all carrying supplies for the expedition. Jenny's got her camera slung around her neck, and Ryan drops plastic containers that he's carrying, and they skitter across the trail. Ben and Jenny help him pick them up. It's good your body parts are attached, Jenny says, or you'd lose them too. Ryan laughs. Like you never lose anything. You're so perfect. Jenny smiles. Ben slows down to check his pocket. Did he forget the list of things to search for at the vernal pool site? No, it's still there, along with the pictures that he's printed off of the internet. Eggs from fairy shrimp, caddisfly cases, snail shells, fingernail clams. Nothing they're looking for is longer than 2 inches, but Ben hopes he can find some specimens to show what lives in a vernal pool, and he wants to show everything that he can in his report. When they get to the site of the pool, Ben stops. Here it is, he says, and Ryan and Jenny stare around at the mud-encrusted, leaf-strewn ground. I don't see any pool, says Ryan. I told you. That's what a vernal pool does, says Ben. It dries up. But there's nothing left to find, Ryan says. There's got to be something. Help me look. And Jenny, will you take some pictures of the area? So Ben steps carefully out into the middle of the darkened leaves where the pool was and squats down. And Ryan starts shoving leaves and dirt aside. I don't see anything, he says. Hey, Ben yells. You've got to be more careful. We don't want to mess anything up. While Jenny snaps pictures, Ryan and Ben work quietly and methodically, sifting through the mud. First, Ben finds a caddisfly casing, and then Ryan shouts, Hey, look, a little clamshell, and here's another one. I know, Ben says. It's like there's nothing there, but then when you look closely, bam, a whole different world opens up. And within 15 minutes, they had filled a couple of containers with snails and clams and caddisfly shells. Too bad we can't get a Spadefoot, says Ryan. Well, they're around here somewhere, says Ben, but they're impossible to find. And just then, something moves in the leaves by his feet. He bends over and pushes the leaves aside. Ben gently places his hand over the creature and picks it up. Is it a Spadefoot? Ryan asks. Nope, says Ben. It's a wood frog. Remember the one that I brought into school? Well, they use vernal pools too. He opens his hands carefully. Look at it. And the 3 of them peer down at its tan, smooth skin and its dark mask around its eyes. It's cool, Ryan says. And Ben looks at the frog. And then he looks at Jenny and Ryan. And an idea comes into his head. A great idea. You guys, go sit over there on that rock, Ben says, pointing to the boulder on the side of the pool. How come? Ryan asks. Just do it, please. Jenny shakes her head, but she follows Ryan to the rock and clambers up right behind him. Jenny, can I use your camera? Ben asks, and he takes the camera from her and he puts the strap around his neck. One more thing, he says, handing the frog to Jenny. You have to hold this. Hold it up so I can see it. No way. What if it poops on me? Consider yourself blessed. Just take it. I'll hurry. They're laughing as Ben focuses the camera on them. Okay, he says. Jenny, hold the frog a little higher and both of you guys smile. Ribbit, Ryan says. Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. And Ben clicks the picture. Ben works like crazy on the report, and for the next 5 days, it's all he thinks about. The best part about a report is what it feels like when it's finally finished. It's like Ben hasn't taken a deep breath for weeks, and then suddenly his lungs are filled with fresh air. Or like he's taken off a pair of really dark sunglasses and can finally see clearly again. And when he's finished, he knows it's good. He just hopes that it's good enough. It's raining by the time Ben finds the street that he's looking for. It started to pour. He's drenched, but his report is inside his jacket, safely tucked in a plastic bag. He pedals his bike slowly so he can see the street numbers, and then he recognizes the car in one of the driveways. Ben parks his bike on the sidewalk, walks up to the door, and knocks. Nobody answers, so he knocks again. And he's about to give up when the door opens. Tabitha Turner stands there looking surprised. Yes? Hello, Mrs. Turner. I'm Ben Maroney. And the drops of rain trickle from his hair and slide down his nose. He wipes his face with the sleeve of his jacket. I met you at Mrs. Tibbetts' house. I know who you are. I'm really sorry to bother you, but I've got something I want to show you. It's my report for geography. She raises one eyebrow. Geography? Yes, ma'am. Geography. It'll just take a minute, please. Tabitha Turner looks back in the house like she's trying to figure out a way to escape, but she steps to the side and motions for Ben to come in. You can hang your wet jacket on that coat rack, she tells him, and maybe you better leave your shoes by the door. So Ben does as he's told, and he follows Mrs. Turner into a large living room. She sits in a straight-back chair by the window, and Ben checks the seat of his jeans to make sure it isn't wet, and then he perches on the edge of the couch. And with his heart pounding, he slides his report out of the plastic bag and places it on the coffee table. I wanted to show you my report on ecosystems, he said, scooting over so she could see it. She glances down at the report and then looks at him blankly, like she's trying to figure out what he's talking about. I was going to do it on the desert because that's where I lived until 4 months ago, and I really loved it there. There was this great museum near my house, and I had all of this desert stuff. I even had a lizard. Its name was Lenny, but I didn't get to bring it with me when I moved. My friend Toby was keeping it, and it died. Mrs. Turner nods, waiting to hear what this is all about. But When I started my desert report, I didn't feel like doing it anymore. Ben is halfway afraid to go on, but there's nothing to do but just plow ahead. So instead, I decided to do it about what it's like where I live now. And he takes a deep breath and lets it out. I decided to do it about your land, about your vernal pool. Tabitha Turner clears her throat and shifts uncomfortably in her chair as if she's about to speak, but Ben doesn't give her the chance to interrupt. He opens his report and he holds it out to her. If you don't have the time to read all of it, but here I talk about how this pool had been there for a really long time, probably 10,000 years, and about the people that lived there. The Wampanoag Indians walked through here maybe like 1,000 years ago. They were the ones that met the pilgrims. And then Ben thumbs through until he finds the photos. See, here are some of the animals that live in vernal pools. And these are salamanders, spotted ones, I'm pretty sure. We didn't find any of these in your pool, but they live around here. And look at these caddisfish larvae. They make these little buildings out of sticks. And he holds up the booklet so she can see the little clam shells that he taped to the sheet. I found these at the pool site, and I figured that they were fairy shrimp too, but I couldn't find any. And I know spadefoots were there earlier this spring, but they're all spread out now. But still, me and my friends did find something interesting. And Ben flips to the last page where he's taped the picture of Ryan and Jenny sitting on a big rock by the dried up pool. And they're both laughing, and Jenny's nose is scrunched up. She's holding the wood frog away from her because she's afraid it's going to poop on her. Ben has barely looked at Mrs. Turner the whole time, but now he sneaks a glance, and she's studying the picture of Ryan and Jenny. There's the barest hint of a smile on her face, and he wonders if she knows. He's about to find out. He barrels ahead with what he had been planning to say. What could happen here is more important than any grade he's going to get in geography. And I put that picture at the end of my report because the picture I put on the front of it. So he flips back to the first page of the report and he holds it up for Tabitha Turner to see. The picture is old and crinkled on the edges, and it shows two kids sitting on a rock holding toads, and the girl is holding the fat toad under her chin and laughing. Tabitha Turner's breath catches. And Ben looks up at her and he sees her hand go to her mouth. But he's not done. Let me read the first page, he says. And Ben reads aloud over the sound of his heart pounding in his chest. There's a habitat close to me that I just discovered. It's like another planet. Even though it's small, it holds 1,000 things. And once there were these two kids who lived near it. They were brother and sister. And they made up a funny story about a giant spirit that looked after the land. They called the creature the Overtone. This is the story of the land and water that the Overtone protects. It has protected it for thousands of years, and I hope it protects it for thousands of more. My report is about a vernal pool in Edensboro, Massachusetts. Ben watches as Tabitha Turner takes her hand from her mouth and reaches for the report. So he hands it to her, and after staring at the picture for a moment, she looks at the ceiling like she's trying to see right through the sky, and then she closes the report. And then she opens it again and leaves through the booklet page by page. When she gets to the picture of Ryan and Jenny, she stares at it, and then she flips back to the picture of her and her brother. Mrs. Turner, Ben, please don't let them put up houses where the toads are. I know it's your land, but please don't do it. Mrs. Tibbets doesn't want you to do it either, but she thinks you're mad at her, and I know you don't get along. She says you won't listen to her. Tabitha Turner gives him a sad smile. I know what my sister-in-law thinks, she says, and she pauses for a moment and then asks, does she know you're doing this? Ben shakes his head. She thinks it's too late, and I was hoping that you might sell it to someone who won't put houses on it, but she says you won't change your mind. He looks at Tabitha Turner. Her face shows nothing, and suddenly Ben is just exhausted. He never should have done this. Mrs. Tibbets was right. Mrs. Turner stands, the report still in her hands. I'll need that back, Ben says. Well, what will you do with the picture? She asks, handing him the booklet. I'll give it back to Mrs. Tibbets. If it's all right, I'd like it, Tabitha Turner says. Okay, Ben says. When I get the report back, I'll ask her if I can give it to you. Actually, she adds, I'd like both of them. The other one too. Sure, Ben says. Okay. Mrs. Turner leads him to the front door and opens it. Thank you for coming by, Ben, she says. Okay, Ben says. If you want, you don't need to say anything more, she says. Thanks for coming by. Ben climbs on his bike for the long ride home, and when he looks back, Mrs. Turner is standing behind the storm door watching him. He feels empty. It's all up to the Overtone now. The next day, when Ben sets his terrarium and his report on the big table at the back of the classroom, a bunch of kids gather around. What's in there? Someone asks. Wetland plants, Ben says. Any snakes? Danny Martin asks. Ben shakes his head. Toads? Someone asks. Frogs? There is an American toad in there, Ben says. I don't see it, Danny says. It's camouflaged, Ben says. It doesn't want you to see it. Well, let's take it out, another kid says. I think we should leave it alone, Ben says. It's already freaked out about where it is. I'm going to take it back to the woods tomorrow. Why don't you keep it? Tommy Miller asks. I don't feel like it, says Ben, and his classmates try to find the toad in the terrarium, but lose interest after a while and drift back to their desks. And that's when Ben notices Jenny leafing through his report. Geez, Ben, this is really long, she says. I know, Ben says. I kind of got carried away. Ryan appears at Jenny's side. Let me see, he says, and then he grabs for it. Whoa, it's 1,000,000 pages. 15, actually, Jenny says. Almost 1,000,000, Ryan says, flipping through the pages. Don't mess it up, says Ben, or I'll feed you to the Overtone. And as he says that, Mrs. Kutcher comes up behind Ben. Did you bring this in, Ben? She says, looking down at the terrarium. Yeah, he says. It's part of my report. And he takes the report out of Ryan's hands and gives it to Mrs. Kutcher. She thumbs through it, and a huge smile spreads across her face. Great work, Ben. Great, great work. Ben grins. It is great work, and he knows it. Okay, well, it sounds like his report was wonderful. Hopefully, that great work that went into writing his report about the vernal pools, maybe that great work is just what Mrs. Tibbet's sister-in-law Tabitha needed to hear. I wonder if his report will convince her not to sell the land. We're going to read our last chapter next time. Bye.